All right, welcome to another song title challenge where the question is, climbers, how should you write this one? This is where climbers, listeners of this podcast, send in their song titles, and you can too, now that you're a listener, to info@daredevilproduction.com. Production is singular. There is no S. info@daredevilproduction.com. Put song title challenge, or STC, into the subject line so that it gets into the right folder. I get a boatload of emails. If you don't, it won't. Okay. So just make sure that happens. And send us in a song title. Send us in a bunch of song titles. Send in as many as you want. And what happens is, and by the way, just don't send me duplicates. Don't start a list and then be like, oh, I want to add this on. And so you just add that onto the list you already sent me, and then you resend it, because then it gets confusing. I just start deleting stuff and I might miss a piece of gold, a piece of platinum. I don't want to do that. So what happens is I bring the song title live to Brent Baxter, our resident hit songwriter, and a hit songwriter guest of ours, a super talented guest. And we have about 15 to 20 minutes to come up with 5 or 6 different conceptual angles to write that title. This is the difference between a good song and a great song. I always say this in the beginning, but I mean, just imagine looking through a hook book and seeing a song titled The Dance. Wah, wah. That is not a song title where you're winning before you're spinning, okay? That's like, nah, I'm not interested. I don't really care. And then Tony Rada's like, but hold on, hold my beer, right? And now it's one of the most iconic songs ever written. It's just this beautiful piece of work. And that's because of the angle that he took on it and then the craftsmanship after that. So it starts with the angle. It's not a co-write in any way, shape, or form. Take all of what we say and use it. Take none of what we say and use it. It's up to you. The only thing that Brent and I and our esteemed guest demand is an invite to the number one party. And if you know me, you should have an open bar, right? I mean, that's just cool. So, Brent, anything you want to add to that before we get started?
No, this is just infotainment. Is to encourage and hopefully inspire you to dig deeper into your song titles and get the best out of them that you can, because nothing is sadder than a wasted song title.
That's right. Oh, and by the way,
a title is a terrible thing to waste. There we go.
That's right. And by the way, I bring this up because we've had several guests who are like, oh my God, I'm going to start doing this, right? Like on a regular basis, because Brent, you've gone back through your hook book, like way back through your hook book, in the way back machine, like 25 years, like 4,000 titles back, and started pulling, okay, here's 20 titles. I'm going to pick one today and do a song title challenge, because your old titles sort of wilt like lettuce. The energy kind of comes off of them. They're not as exciting as the day you put them down. And for whatever reason, you just didn't get to fleshing out that title. When you go back and just do 15 minutes of work on one title, and what happens? You get cuts, you get holds, you get
stuff happens.
Love, you get stuff happening, because there's a reason that title made it into your hook book to begin with. And this just takes it to another level, right?
That's right. That's right. So it's fun stuff. So let's get to it.
Yeah, I'm super excited to introduce our guest, but you're going to introduce our guest, but I can't wait for y'all to hear this. This person's like, just first of all, just get your shots ready. Everybody get a shot. Everybody get their drink. Vulgar display of prowess on this one right here. Vulgar display of prowess.
And I'm just keep it a family-friendly display of prowess, because our guest has another call in like 30 minutes. If I do the whole bio, she will not get there, because the whole bio will take up the whole time, because she's awesome. So our guest is a Nashville-based 2-time Grammy-nominated independent songwriter and recording artist.
Not one, but two.
She has had written songs recorded by Kelly Clarkson, Kesha, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, Miranda Lambert, Ronnie Dunn, Sturgill Simpson, Ingrid Andress, Brian McKnight, Rabel, Kaylee Shore, Ty Herndon, Ashley Monroe, Mandy Diaz, Jake Hoot, Cassidy Pope, and just it goes on.
Holy crap. Hold on. Sturgill Simpson and Brian Wilson.
That's right. That's how you do it.
That you will be cool forever. Seriously. I
could not believe that one. I'll tell you that.
Brian Wilson's like, hey, I could write In My Room Again or record one of Jamie Floyd's songs.
That's right.
What the fuck?
But there's more. There's more. So, okay, new releases include The Blade, co-written by our guest and recorded by legendary Ronnie Dunn for his album 100 Proof Neon. And that's just some of the the songwriting stuff. There's also all the film and TV stuff, the Broadway stuff. Let's see here. I'm just cherry picking through here. Her credits include writing the finale for Dolly Parton's A Country Christmas Story and writing and performing the entire 12-song soundtrack for Burt Reynolds' award-winning final film, The Last Movie Star. She's also appeared in the critically acclaimed documentary, The Last Songwriter, alongside Garth Brooks and Jason Isbell. And it goes on and it goes on. And so does her career because she's awesome. Jamie Floyd, welcome to The Climb.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, thank you for having me. That was very sweet.
Thank you for saying yes. Oh my gosh. Like, I mean, just tell Garth and Sturgill and Brian Wilson that they can hang on. You're on The Climb right now. I feel, you see how I did that? You see what I did there, Brent? Like
that's nice.
It's all about us.
Yes. Be sure and tell them next time you see them hi from us and come on. So,
all right.
Anyway, so Jamie, thank you for doing this. It was a blast getting to know you a little bit and grab some late night McDonald's in Denmark at the National Nights International Songwriting Festival with you. So that was much fun. So thank you for doing this. I'm glad it didn't scare you off.
No, I'm so glad the Denmark Festival brought us all together. And yeah, I'm super excited to be a part of this. Let's see what happens.
Yes,
let's do it. This will be fun. So here's what we got. You guys ready for the song title?
Never ever, but
hey.
Okay, so this is from climber Shay Lynn.
Shay Lynn. Okay, hey, Shay.
And hey, Shay, we know Shay, actually. Shay is a transplant from Utah.
Oh, yeah, we met her at the Climb conference out in Salt Lake City.
That's right. And the song title is Cheap Talk.
All right, Cheap Talk.
All right. So my hot take on this, I kind of like the title. Like, it's got a little bite to it. Like, I think I'd be interested just from listening to the title to see what happened with this. And I'm very, very interested to see which way we go. Some titles out, Jamie, some titles we'll have, and I'll be like, well, this just feels really bland. But again, back to the dance example, it's like, that doesn't matter, right? Yeah. It's all about this. And the challenge part of it, by the way, I think you know this now, but the challenge part is, because we've had, I don't know, a couple handfuls of writers now that are like, I spring the title and like, well, this is the part where I would be like, let's go to lunch. Right. Or what else do you have? But the challenge is we're writing this shit right here. Right. But I like Cheap Talk. I think it's a cool title.
It's definitely playing off the talk is cheap kind of cliche or whatever proverb kind of thing. So, I mean, that's the first thing I think of is what are examples of cheap talk. But I also think like, I like to do the opposite kind of thing, the hot and cold. So like nothing's more expensive than cheap talk. Like, what's an example of that?
Oh, I like that.
Maybe the guy that always says all this stuff, but he never follows through. And so it's all cheap talk. Maybe it's the kind of thing like, he treats you like you're cheap just because it's all cheap talk.
Yeah.
And by the way, we can put anything before the title and anything after the title to twist it up, have fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on that, kind of to go off of what you were saying, Brent, like that is an interesting thing to kind of go the most expensive of all to be your heart being broken as far as what cheap talk leads to. But I love that idea of like top shelf whiskey, kind of like, those memes or whatever that are like, whiskey, $20. Buy your ankles from the bathroom while your friend like makes a or whatever. You know what I mean? Priceless.
Yeah.
Right. You're doing something ridiculous, that you would have never done. So I just think there's something cool with the opposites, but
like expensive whiskey and cheap talk, just about a scene at a bar or that kind of thing.
Yeah, the cheap talk is part of a recipe for heartache. And that's my initial dive in.
Oh, that's awesome. So you could go and list all the other, sort of talk about all the other ingredients of that recipe.
Yeah.
And then and just sprinkle in 2 cups of cheap talk.
But you've got to work hard to pay for a whole bar tab for a night. You know what I mean? That would cost you a day at work. But cheap talk costs you your heart sometimes.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think of like the guy that's always like, okay, I'm going to come off the road or I'm going to be home more. I've been too busy working. He's married. I'm thinking married like a divorce song kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's just never home and he doesn't change his ways. He's not paying enough attention. He says he will, but it's cheap talk. And that just got real expensive because now he's talking cheap with half of his stuff because she took the other half. Like, it's divorce, right?
Cheap talk with half of his stuff.
Right?
Ouch.
You know what that makes me think of too is like if it was like my favorite modern day songwriters, Laurie McKenna, and then if you go a little I love Dean Dillon. And so the two of them are just favorites of mine. Like in that kind of mindset, if I were thinking, like if I was trying to do it, get into their brains, I could hear like a female song going, you work all day, we've got a house, we've got cars, I've got everything I need, and all you can afford to give me is cheap talk.
Yeah.
Kind of like that's, I don't know how else.
Hold on.
It's like really expensive everything else, but the talk is cheap, and so it's hollow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
Okay, so on that, now check me out on this. So what if you're going through, here's the furniture in the room, right? Like all the expensive stuff.
Yeah, you just walk through the house.
The Maserati. What if we had a VW? We've got the 4,000 square foot house. What if we had a double wide?
Yeah.
Just like the opposite of everything that you have. Like I would do all of that if we could also get rid of the cheap talk.
Yeah.
Or something.
Willing to spend on me is the cheap talk, and here.
Like you're not spending time.
Yeah, and there's something, of course, there's worth involved here. I'm also thinking about, like you were saying, adding something on the front or the back. Like, it's also like the idea that if it's like something about, if there's gossip involved or whatever, like the idea that everything that's damaging obviously is what's expensive that you'd be paying for. But what you get to your face is the cheap stuff. Like, I want the expensive stuff. Like we were kind of saying, I want you to give me something that'll cost you. Yeah. Not that'll just cost me.
Yeah.
Well, there's something there. There's something that'll cost you and not cost me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I want to be expensive.
I love you. Yeah. Because if you said I love you, that could cost you. But if I only say it, that just costs me. And you like dancing around it and everything is cheap talk. But I wish, because that is a title that feels, yes, it feels like it has some claws in it. But I wish, I'm racking my brains right now, that there was like cheap talk. I don't know. I'm going back to your original stuff too, Brent. Like you were saying, if there's something else expensive or there's something else.
Yeah.
Expensive heartbreak. That's not it. That's very like surface level. But
I have a positive twist on it, because cheap talk it tends to go negative. So I love when you can take what at first blush looks like a negative thing and go, how do we flip this into a positive song? Because of course, Jamie, but leaving no climber left behind, man, positive just tends to work better commercially in general is what they're cutting more in general, right? What
if we put a comma, cheap, comma, talk?
Cheap. Oh, well, let's put a pin in that. I don't want to lose my thought. But my thought was like, it's the opposite of have all the expensive stuff, but the talk is cheap. How about, we have just a little apartment. We don't have the latest, we got the Goodwill fashion, and we have all this stuff that's inexpensive, but what isn't, but his love, that when him saying he'd love me forever and love me like nobody else, that wasn't cheap talk.
Yeah.
Like everything else is cheap. We're cutting coupons out,
that's not
all that
cheap
stuff.
talk.
And him saying he'd love me like nobody else, that wasn't cheap talk. Like he follows through. So I have priceless love. Everything else is on the cheap because it has to be, but it's all right.
Yeah.
Because him saying he loves me, that's not cheap talk. So.
Oh yeah. Something like he's got a 1976 pickup truck, right? A 1976 Chevy Silverado with 250,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
But he shows up, he's at the dinner table every night at 7:00.
Yeah.
He won't buy a new pair of shoes until his old ones literally fall off his feet, but he loves our kids more than anything. That just kind of like back and forth. And so, you know what? We don't have a lot of things and we don't have cheap talk.
Yeah. Like he's real. And you can even the second verse, like he's real and he opens up and he's honest and, all that kind of stuff about, we don't have the nicest things, material things.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because the stuff that really matters, what the promises he made when he said, I do, that wasn't cheap talk because he does kind of thought could be fun too.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh. Okay. In the context of a wedding. Right. Like I've been to a bunch of weddings.
Yeah.
And one thing I've learned about weddings is that, because I actually went to a bunch like in a row one summer, it was like retarded. I was on a plane every other weekend going somewhere it was just ridiculous, like a tour. Yeah. And what I found out was, and we went to weddings that were super expensive and weddings that were very, very inexpensive. Yeah. And what I discovered was that if the bride and the groom are supposed to be getting married, it's a party. The energy is what makes that whole thing happen. And if they're not, it doesn't matter. And the money doesn't matter. Like one of the most expensive weddings I went to was a super huge Hollywood like executive at Sony Pictures and up on the top of the Hollywood Hills, and they freaking catered In-N-Out Burger, man, because it was like, you know what I mean? It was just like they didn't give up. So it's kind of like if you go on that wedding, like we cut corners on this and we cut corners on that, and it's just like two people that are just so in love. The wedding doesn't matter, you know what I mean? Like the party doesn't matter. It's just the people. And when he said I do, that wasn't cheap talk.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a girl talking about her friends saying, oh, well, you should have this and you should have that. And they're calling them cheap.
Yeah.
It could be something like that. And with the other thing you had too, if you reverse it with the guy and talking about the girl, how I think of Granger Smith, if your girl would rather go mudding than shopping, she's a keeper.
Yeah.
So all the things that girls want to have, like it's sort of the opposite of it's a business doing pleasure with you, right? Like she's down to do all this stuff, like, or it's a corollary to Gretchen. What's her face? Gretchen Wilson. Yeah. With why would I buy this from
Victoria's Secret or not?
Victoria's Secret when I get
Walmart or whatever.
Yeah, for half the price. It's just like that, and you're basically saying she's cheap, but her talk ain't cheap, right? Like everything she says she's going to do, she's going to do. Okay, so bigger market if we go to a male.
Yeah, true.
Perspective.
Yeah, I think too. It makes me think of like, I think there could be like a country music spin on this, like if. Depending where you, like if you were moving somewhere, like moving to Nashville or wherever the bright lights are kind of thing, like saying, like kind of like beware of cheap talking towns kind of thing. Like just, kind of like, I'm trying to find a way to personify it where a person doesn't do you wrong, but the
city could.
Yeah, that the city could. And just because, I don't know, there's something with, I don't know, I'm just racking my brains how to find a way into that. But like, again, kind of part of a recipe of sorts, like cheap talking towns make people who know how to break hearts, who make people who search me out, who leave me. You know what I mean? Like cheap talking towns will talk you into loving somebody who doesn't love you back because they were trapped in it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm just like, I'm exploring the narrative angle of it.
Yeah.
Like it all starts with a cheap talking town that told somebody a lie who told you a lie.
I like that thought of cheap talking town, like and because I was thinking of gossip, and you mentioned gossip earlier, and like all this chatter, whether social media chatter, daytime talk chatter, gossip show chatter, all that stuff is pretty cheap, right? It's like it's just fleeting entertainment. So much of it is not,
including the news.
Yeah, news, it's surface level stuff. It's not digging deeper. It's not helping us grow. It's distracting. But how expensive is that cheap talk? Like, oh, it's just distraction. But or the cheap talk about other people, that's really expensive. Like gossip about people hurts and it damages people.
You know what that make? Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, no, that was just kind of I was trickling off. Save me.
Oh, no. That just makes me think, like, is there an angle where, because I know you were trying to turn it positive earlier, my least favorite thing, do not turn it positive. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I saw that look on your face. You're like,
what are you doing? No, I'm kidding. But I was going to say, like, is there a way where you could say, like, after, I don't know what the story is yet, but like after all I've been through, I'd give anything for cheap talk because all you did was like, I don't know if there was a way to make it desirable, like after everything that I've been dragged through, gotta give anything for cheap talk at this point. Yeah, go ahead and tell me what I want to hear. Like,
like you're not even giving me that.
Okay, hold on, going super heavy here.
Oh boy.
Okay, but you sent me that podcast, Brent, from Brett Warren.
Yeah,
and who lost a child. And he had Jeffrey Steele on, who lost a child, and I was listening to that episode and everything they were talking about. And Janelle lost a child, right? So she's like totally dialed into that. And she's like, you don't want anybody to talk when that happens. You get all the same friggin' cliches. Oh, well, I guess God wanted him more, or this or that. And what I could just use right now is some real good, cheap talk. Like about anything else other than what just happened, right?
Yeah.
That could be so powerful.
I feel like that is such a great angle because you could put all those things in there, whether it's something very intense like that, like a lot, or if you put it to heartache or whatever angle. But Like, because then you could put all of that in there. Time's going to heal everything. You're going to wake up one day and forget about all of that. Like,
yeah, no, yeah.
No.
You had them while you had them. They were a blessing while you had all that crap. And it's like, no, like F off.
Almost like the cheap talk is the buffer
Mm-hmm.
to not have to hear the heavy side of it. Right.
Right. Exactly.
I love that.
Right. But I mean, I was kind of bouncing off what you said, Jamie, which was just like what makes cheap talk desirable. Cheap talk being anything like, how's the weather? I hate the Packers this year.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Anything other than, in other words, I need to defocus on some cheap talk, right? And so that just thought, like, what would make it desirable was something horrible that happened, and you're trying to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
On that same note, I could hear like a Pistolantes type take on it, being like the idea of like a night, one night stand kind of thing. Like, I'm out there looking for, I don't know how to say messy or quick is not the word, but like whatever love and cheap talk.
Yeah.
Going in the bars, go ahead, look me in the eye, tell me it's forever, tell me this. Some kind of like cool hooky thing that is playful with it. Like
Almost like expensive shots and cheap talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had me at cheap talk and $15 cocktails or a $15 martini or cheap talk and a $20 cocktail.
Like Friday love and cheap talk or something where it's like, it has an expiration on it, but she's like, sure. And guess what else? Tonight I actually smoke cigarettes or whatever else she does that she never does.
Yeah.
Because that's just kind of like what I'm looking for. Or weekend love and cheap talk or something. Feel of that, like a kind of a barn burner type of feeling.
Oh, yeah.
And that could be fun too. Maybe some little angle on that or shading of that or a different thing could be, the girl that's getting over the heartbreak and like all of her friends know what happened, or they don't know what to say, so don't say anything, or they just talk about that and she's tired of it. So a lot of what we talked about, now she just wants whatever in cheap talk, like go where she doesn't know people, so they don't know how to talk about the real stuff with her or whatever, and anything else is like just not talk about that. So it's a lighter version of that. That could be really fun.
But you could go hardcore on that with the lyrics if you did like third person.
Oh yeah,
maybe somebody's like maybe damaged forever, right?
Yeah.
Like from something.
Yeah.
I just love that idea of like, go ahead, girl, like slap on cheap talk like a Band-Aid. Let's do this.
What if it's a wild chick like that, like you're describing, Jamie, who is like one of those people who's, I think of Dolly Parton, like it costs a lot of money to look this cheap, right?
Yeah.
Like she's so freaking smart. That woman could run a country and I would vote for her. Okay. And regardless of what her policies were, I just know she's smarter than everybody else. But to have like, to be describing somebody who like maybe went to an Ivy League school and did all this and did that, but she's just real. She's out there in her Levi's jeans and a pair of $40 boots doing shots with the boys, like whatever, like,
yeah, I feel like you could have very syncopated language or like very like kind of digging in, like chanty, like talk it to me cheap, give it to me sweet, da 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 da. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like let the tears roll down my cheeks. Like let's do. You know what I mean? Like I want the worst of the best that you've got.
Oh, show me, do your worst. Do your worst. I love that.
But if you're gonna talk cheap. If you're going to love sweet, if you're going to leave now, you know what I mean? Or leave at 3. Don't leave, you know what I mean? Don't wait. Like do all the things that are talk is cheap. I know, like take.
Oh, are you correlating cheap talk with like just being real, like in the moment? Like, let's not pretend this is something different than what it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like put it on. It's kind of like
you're talking about like a one night stand where you're two consenting adults that are going to go at it. And so let's not pretend it's this or that. It's cheap talk and I'm down with that. Like it's
like I'm out there looking for trouble. Like I am looking for cheap talk. I'm looking for highball cheap talk. Like like you were
ooh, highball cheap talk. I like that alliteration right there.
Big drinks.
And I like the idea, kind of going back to something you talked about, Jamie. It was cheap talk town. Like it's a cheap talk town. Like people talk about each other behind their backs. You got these boys at the bar talking about all their big stuff they're going to go do.
Well, she could be.
And here's me talking about how I'm getting over you. It's a cheap talk.
Well, also like girls, like you were saying, let's burn it down. Like go and drop me off in a cheap talk in town where the
Cheap Talk Tavern.
Yeah, the Cheap Talk Town Bar.
Where I don't know anybody, they don't know me, where I don't got to tell my story, where I can be somebody else looking for a cheap talk.
Yeah.
But it's a little fiery.
Oh, yeah.
Little Miranda Lambert Vice.
Yeah, like when would you ever ask for it? But you are, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Turning it into a necessary evil, which could be a cool lyric in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I like highball.
Necessary.
What if it's an ode to, instead of the, well, I think when you were talking about the town, we were all kind of just energetically grooving towards Nashville, right?
Yeah.
Being the music city. So AKA.
We should write sometime. Yeah, sure. Nashville Promises. Yeah.
There you go. The music business, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe it's an uplifting song to artists where it's like, hey man, don't let this town get you down, because all these rules that they're making you play by were invented by highball cheap talk. It's just, it's kind of like in the line of Steve Jobs says, when one of the most freeing moments that you have, when you have that epiphany that the reality as you know it, what is real that is created around you, is created by people that aren't any smarter than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just like, we don't have to play by these rules.
Yeah.
It's just highball cheap talk. We can do what we want. We can burn it down. We can do this. It could be a total empowerment song because it's just cheap talk, right? Because isn't that like, that's it. That's an empowering thing.
Yeah.
That can be aimed at social media. That can be aimed at society. That can be aimed at the club, the country club with Stepford Wives. That can be aimed at high school.
Yeah. Anybody who's saying you can't. What was that, Jamie?
You could argue that the greatest, if you're talking about Nashville, the greatest songs come from the result of cheap talk being thrown at you so much because you know the difference.
Yeah.
Thank God for cheap talk, because I was taught basically what not to, all of that rejection or whatever else, all that cheap talk turned into fulfilling some kind of dream or whatever. But the idea of like, go ahead, give me the cheap talk and I'll give you the real stuff kind of thing. Like cheap talk leads to real stories and real life and real, like you're saying, just overcoming whatever.
You just said something. And I know the difference.
Yeah.
Like that could be empowering from either a male perspective or a female perspective, just a simple bar interaction. Like you say this and you say this and you say that, and that's all cheap talk, but I know the difference.
Yeah. You thought I wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, underestimate me. That'll be fun. That kind of song. Right?
Yeah.
We got some good looks at this, you guys.
Yes,
this is
fun.
really cool. Like there's a couple angles in there. Like I would like to write. Way to go, Shaylin, for sending that in. Thank you so much.
You, Shay.
Awesome.
First of all, thanks again for saying yes, Jamie Floyd.
Yes.
And what do you have going on right now that we can shower love all over you?
Oh gosh. Well, I have new music coming out, I think right at the beginning of March is what we're aiming for.
Okay, cool.
So would be wonderful. I've got lots of shows before then, but to follow me on social media, Jamie Floyd on Instagram. And I also have been mentoring songwriters and doing song camps and things, kind of just doing outreach. So I have all that information too. You can always reach out. And so I've just been working with songwriters and working on my record and working on Rabel's upcoming record. Maddie Diaz has one coming too. So keep your eye on all of that. But I would love for you to just connect on social media. And so that when the new music is coming, you can pre-save it and do all the things.
Awesome. And that's Jamie, Jamie, Floyd, Floyd.
Like Pink Floyd.
And that's across all social media?
Second, yes, correct. Yep.
Okay, cool. And website, so we'll put that in.
Show notes, all that good stuff.
Yeah, officialjamiefloyd.com. Yeah.
I love it. Well, hey, congratulations on the new music coming out. Good luck with everything that you're working on. I know some of it we can't talk about, but I remember those discussions in Denmark, and I know you're going hardcore with this, and we support you, girl. We support you. Okay. You're doing the right thing. We love you. And that brings us to the end of another song title challenge. Once again, send your titles into info@daredevilproduction.com, and you might get an artist / songwriter like this person, Jamie Floyd, to help flesh out your ideas. This podcast exists because we want you to win. So keep on climbing.
And we'll see you at the top.